You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Jeff Garvin.
I'm not happy with my setup here.
Okay.
And I'm Dan Zarzana.
No, we have to start over now because you weren't happy
that was funny.
with your setup.
That was supposed to be, they don't always have to be rigid scripted.
You're right.
We can go off the cuff sometimes. So it's going to be okay, Jeff. Now we have to start over.
Yeah. You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Jeff Garvin.
And I'm Dan Zarzana.
Let the journey begin.
Welcome to the show and Happy New Year!
Happy New Year, Dan.
So due to holiday stuff, job stuff, personal stuff, we did not record in December.
Nope.
And we did not release a January episode. So we're sorry to the listeners, but we hope you forgive us. But we are back with a whole new year of The Hero's Journey.
That's right, Dan. We're back. And we want to take a moment to thank our patrons.
Woohoo!
We have 4 new patrons on board the SSHJP. Scott Sanford, Evan Jones, Dr. Lisa Carlson, and our first demigod level patron, Dean Ethington, the very same Dean who designed our HJP logo.
Yeah, and we say his name on every episode already anyway, but he went ahead and joined that demigod level.
Yeah, so thank
you, all 4 of you. That's great. Glad to have you. So it may sound goofy, but I am completely moved that there are people out there who like what we're doing enough to send us a donation every month.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. I've never done anything in my life that wasn't for some other corporation or something. This is the first time I've ever done any kind of a creative endeavor and someone is contributing to it.
Yeah, you could get it for free, and yet there you are giving us money anyway.
Yeah, I'm touched. So thank you to all the patrons.
It's pretty awesome when you put your time and your love and your money into something and people like it so much that they give you money. Mm-hmm. As of this recording, we are now at $32 a month, which I am stoked to announce pays for our Libsyn podcast hosting and our domain name registration.
Yes.
So thank you again to Scott and Evan and Lisa and Dean.
We're 16% of the way to our $200 a month goal, at which point all of our hard costs per episode will be covered. We may get there quicker than expected, so we are reaching out. What kind of incentives would get other listeners to help us hit that goal? I don't know. T-shirts, Hero's Journey. I would like a Hero's Journey T-shirt with Journey On the back.
Oh, yeah.
Like the logo on the front and Journey On the back.
Hero's Journey coffee mugs.
Coffee mugs.
How about a recording of you and I singing the theme song a cappella?
I don't think anybody would pay for that.
Maybe if you give us money, we won't. We won't.
We'll stop doing it.
Because we could insert that right in the middle of the episode, and there you are listening, and all of a sudden it's assaulting your ears. So maybe we're holding you hostage.
So if you've got any ideas, or tweet at us at Heroes Podcast, or you can Facebook at us /Heroes Journey Podcast.
And if you would like to gain access to exclusive audio and video content, including extra tidbits and behind-the-scenes stuff, and earn the right to vote on the subject of future episodes, go to patreon.com/heroesjourney to learn more.
This is episode 15, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Woohoo! Dan, I did not know this, but Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was originally a radio comedy broadcast on BBC Radio 4 in 1978.
I did not know that either.
Yeah,
I thought the book was the first iteration of the story.
Me too. Only later did Douglas Adams adapt his material into novel form. It was first published by Pan Books in London on October 12, 1979, and sold 250,000 copies in the first 3 months.
That's amazing.
That is a lot of books.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In music terms, that would be a certified gold record in the U.S. in 3 months, which is more or less unheard of unless you are, Britney Spears.
I'm sorry. It is 2019.
Prince,
You just
like Prince, like a Prince.
There are so many.
The Beatles sold
Jeffrey,
a lot of.
You are exposing yourself right now. This is
Collective Soul. Like Collective Soul never sold that many. Why are you laughing at me right now?
Collective Soul.
The Backstreet Boys have sold quite a few record albums.
All right, I'm
and that's
moving
just
on.
the 45 single.
I'm moving on. So in addition to multiple radio adaptations, by the way, have you heard the original BBC radio drama?
No.
Radio comedy
No.
show? I heard it when I was, I don't know, junior high school maybe. My mom bought a copy of it for me. This is before I even read the book.
Was it on cassette tape?
It was on cassette tape.
Wow.
Yes. So I am now exposing myself.
No kidding. I still have the original Empire Strikes Back radio drama on cassette tape.
Ah, nice. I have the Star Wars one on CD.
I have the Star Wars.
Compact
I have the
disc.
Star Wars one on. No, I have Return of the Jedi on LP vinyl.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
So, in addition to the multiple radio adaptations and a whole series of novels and short stories by Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was made into a 6-episode television series on BBC Two, multiple stage productions, comic books, audiobooks. I listened to the audiobook for this.
Yeah, me too. The Stephen Fry narrated
Yeah,
version.
he was great.
He's so good.
The infamous PC text adventure game that you referenced last episode. And, of course, the 2005 feature film starring Martin Freeman, Zooey Deschanel and her gigantic blue eyes.
Yeah.
The artist formerly known as Mos Def. He's currently Yassine Bey. That is his name now, Yassine Bey.
Interesting.
Sam Rockwell, who I adore in just about everything he's ever done.
Yes.
Except The Hitchhiker's Guide to the
my
Galaxy.
God, yeah.
I didn't really care for. Anyway, and the late, great Alan Rickman. Pour one out for Alan Rickman.
So I had never read the book, seen the movie. My only exposure to this story until this episode was the PC text adventure game.
Yeah.
I went online and I found a place online where you can play the PC text adventure game.
Did you?
I did. And I'd forgotten how frustrating it is to play PC text adventures because there's it's not like there's an environment you interact with. It's just a command prompt and you have to guess and guess and guess. And that game kills you at every possible. I got to the point where I'm lying down in front of the bulldozer and then I couldn't get any further.
Okay, so page 1.
Yeah, exactly. Page 1.
That is frustrating. Do you have to follow the book exactly?
You have to get up in the dark, put on your bathrobe, reach into the pocket, find a bottle of aspirin because you're hungover. You take the aspirin, and if you do anything out of order, it's like it just stonewalls you. So anyway.
Oh, that is so frustrating.
But it was fun.
Why would anyone play that?
Well, the way you die, the ways that you die are hilarious. So even failing at the game is funny. So I played the video game again. I did the audiobook, and then I made it through about 40 minutes of the 2005 feature film.
Yeah.
It was unwatchable.
I tried watching it again too, and it took me, I got about halfway through it in 3 sittings. I just couldn't.
We're going to get into this whole story, but I guess I'm just going to broadcast in this moment. I don't think I've ever read something that suffered from so much overhype as The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh.
I really wanted to enjoy it, and it just didn't live up to expectations for me.
So you're talking about the book?
The book, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think it was a combination of things, but looking at every story through the lens of the hero's journey can, in a way, it can cripple your enjoyment of something because you are searching for classic motifs.
Yeah.
And this is a British farce. It's an absurd comedy.
Yes.
And so within the first 5 pages, I want to say, Earth is destroyed and everything that the main character has ever loved or cared about or known is gone. So there are no stakes because what else does he have to lose, right? There's no stakes.
Yeah.
And the character, until the last third of the book, really makes no choices.
Yeah, he's just along for the ride.
The point of the book, I think, is the randomness and meaninglessness of life. But I found it very difficult to connect with any of the characters. I enjoyed the farcical, hilarious comedy of Douglas Adams, but I found it really difficult to connect to any of the characters.
I loved the radio drama. The radio drama is fantastic, the original 1978 one. I then read the novel in high school, and I listened to the Stephen Fry audiobook twice, once in December and once at the beginning of January to prepare for this. And I have generally enjoyed preparing for every episode we've done so far, and I did not like the pre-production for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Wow. Without further ado, we bring you a hero's journey analysis of Douglas Adams's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
So the hero's journey begins with the world of common day, where we see our main character in their status quo, normal life. Arthur Dent is an Englishman working in local radio. He lives a normal, unremarkable life in an unremarkable house on the edge of an English village. I want to mention something about the name Arthur Dent, and I'm wondering if this was intentional or if I'm just reading into this super hard. Arthur, to me, calls to mind King Arthur, especially because this character's British.
Okay.
And then Dent is an imperfection or a depreciation of an item. So I'm wondering if I'm just reading too much into that.
I don't know. Like, so many of the names in this book are total nonsense that it makes sense that he would purposely choose.
I mean, yes, the
Zaphod,
the
Beeble,
non-human names are sure, but the name Ford Prefect.
Such a great name.
I mean, it just sounds ridiculous, but this is the first time I've ever really thought of it. A ford is a place where you can cross a river.
Yeah.
So Ford is helping Arthur get through this experience of his. I mean, if you get into the middle of a river with a fast current, it just takes you. And that's what this story is for Arthur. He's just rushing down a river.
Yeah.
And Ford is the helpful place for him.
That's deep, Dan.
A prefect is a student in a position of authority at
Hogwarts.
A school. Specifically Hogwarts. Yes, that's where that... So I think the name Ford Prefect for that particular character is meaningful.
Wow.
Anyway, so the house, I love his description of the house. It was about 30 years old, squat-ish, square-ish. Everything is ish. It's like really not quite, it doesn't go all the way. It's just, it's kind of ish. Made of brick and had 4 windows set in the front of a size and proportion that more or less failed to please the eye. I love that.
There's something great about the most polite British way of just insulting something.
Right. And then Arthur himself is described as never quite at ease with himself. So it's just like everything is just slightly off. So anyway, it's just Arthur and his house are just simply functional. That's about the best you can say about both of them. So Arthur, he's having a typical morning, breakfast, shaving, getting dressed, and then this is where you come in with the call to adventure.
With the call to adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. Well, it turns out the village council has voted to tear down Arthur's house to make an expressway, a bypass,
which for our American listeners is a freeway.
Right. And along comes Arthur's best friend, Ford Prefect, who, unbeknownst to Arthur, is actually an alien from Beetlejuice, a roving researcher for a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which gives interplanetary travelers tips on how to get around and what to see. And Ford has been stuck on Earth for 15 years trying to blend in by posing as an out-of-work actor. And I love the way they describe that he chose his name because they were, common, normal-sounding words. And, of course, it's a terribly conspicuous, fake-sounding name, right? He finds Arthur lying in front of a bulldozer in his front garden. In a great moment of farce and commentary on free will and British bureaucracy, Ford convinces the demolition foreman to lie down in Arthur's place to make sure they don't tear down his house, while Ford whisks him off to the pub to break the news that the world is about to end.
I love how that scene is a prelude to what's about to happen.
Right.
It mirrors
the
events of the Vogons. They're saying, well, the plans have been on display at Alpha Centauri for the last 50 years.
If you can't be troubled to look them up, then it's not.
Right.
Yeah. I included that situation in the home wrecking situation in Ordinary World. And I called Prefects grabbing him the call to adventure.
Yes.
But the tearing down the house is a metaphor for tearing down Earth, so it all fits in the same pocket.
Yeah, okay. The call to adventure is followed by the refusal of the call, where, confronted with the fear of the unknown, our hero refuses to take on the adventure. Sometimes this energy is expressed from within the hero, and sometimes from without. A point that I saw as a refusal was Arthur refusing to go with Ford to the Horse and Groom pub. He doesn't want to get up because then the bulldozers will destroy his house. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know. There's no really fear of the unknown because he doesn't know what the adventure is yet. Ford is just telling him, you need to come with me and you're going to need a stiff drink to handle what I'm about to tell you.
He's still stuck in the I must preserve the status quo and not let my house get torn down, which is the energy of refusal.
So as you stated, Ford Prefect kind of telepsychically convinces Mr. Prosser to lie down in front of the bulldozer and convinces Arthur to come with him to the pub. And in another Field of Dreams stadium food moment, Ford orders 6 pints of beer, pays a $5 and tells the bartender to keep the change. And the bartender is very appreciative of this.
This is 1978, I
what?
guess. So.
6 pints of beer and tip for $5?
Oh, I wonder what the exchange rate was.
My goodness.
This was before Brexit, too, so you got to take that into account. Another element of refusal is after Ford tries to break the news, Arthur goes tearing out of the pub back to his house to try and save his house again. He's like, nope.
Yeah,
he's not processing this at all.
Right. Well, I mean, how could you?
It's a solid point.
I love that line is when Ford says, what would you do if I were to tell you that I'm not from Guilford, but from a planet outside Beetlejuice? I don't know. Is that something sounds like something you're likely to say?
In the film, there's actually a funny moment calling out Most Def, who isn't even making an attempt at a British accent, where Martin Freeman says that would explain the accent. Well, that leads us to meeting with the mentor. The hero receives special counsel on how to operate in the special world, or supernatural aid, the unexpected assistance that comes to one who has undertaken his proper adventure. Ford hitchhikes and somehow transports Arthur aboard the Vogon flagship. So now, in a small galley cabin somewhere in the intestines of this ship, Arthur Dent awakes in the darkness next to Ford Prefect, and Prefect explains that they've hitchhiked onto this ship just in time to escape the demolition of Earth. And Prefect becomes the mentor here, guiding Arthur into the special post-Earth world.
Right.
And he shows Arthur his copy of the hero's guide to the hitchhiker's journey. He shows Arthur his electronic copy of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which, by the way, is a pretty incredible prediction of the Kindle.
Yes, I thought of that.
You could say that the guide itself is supernatural aid, or even the slogan emblazoned on its cover, "Don't panic."
Yeah.
This is what I think of as the mentor moment. I also would include the babel fish, or the babel fish, which allows him to understand any language. It's also a great sci-fi workaround, that
absolutely
all
it
the
is.
Aliens speak English, and the way he describes it is pretty amazing. That this fish feeds on language,
brainwave energy,
and then poops out a translation.
Would you stick a babel fish in your ear if it meant you could understand any language on Earth?
It's funny, in my cloistered little world, I so rarely have to deal with other languages that I don't know that I would. It would be great to have one for travel.
Huh. I hear other languages every day, particularly at work. My office place is very diverse. There are dozens of different languages spoken at work.
You'd totally stick the babel fish in your ear?
Oh, absolutely.
My workplace is just me in no one. If I could speak cat and dog, that would help me.
The next segment is crossing the first threshold, where the hero passes a barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. As we discussed in the opening, Arthur doesn't make a lot of choices or take agency.
Yeah, it's certainly not early on in the story. He is a victim of circumstance over and over again.
Yes.
In fact, so much so that I almost put Ford down as the protagonist because he's the more active of the two.
I thought of that too.
Oh, we could have had a Shawshank Redemption moment.
So I said that Arthur being pulled up into the Vogon constructor ship by way of matter transference beam when Ford hitches a lift, that is crossing the first threshold, because that is his escape from the destruction of Earth into intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic.
Another dimension.
That is his escape into space and the rest of his adventure.
I chose a slightly different moment just because of the way Arthur processes it, which is the Vogon flagship enters hyperspace, and that's truly when they're entering another dimension. And Arthur Dent suddenly realizes he's 6 light years from home, or where home used to be, and everything and everyone that he knows is gone, and he's in the special world for good.
Yeah. I enjoyed that sequence where he was thinking about things from Earth. Like McDonald's. There's no more McDonald's. And it doesn't really affect him much. And he's thinking about other things. And then he thinks of some random person who was in the grocery store in line behind him at the grocery store the other day.
Yeah.
And that's what causes him to break down.
I think the thing that really works about this book is how relatable it is because how obsessed with minutia Arthur Dent is. He is so bathed in the small details of life, and the fact that they all get vaporized in an instant shows how meaningless everything that he's cared about has ever been.
Yeah.
There's really been nothing that he's cared about that makes any difference. It's all gone.
Yeah.
I will say one thing about the film that I thought was brilliant.
Oh, okay.
That I did not expect, and I thought I was going to love the movie because I was worried it was going to suck, which it did. But the opening sequence being a musical number from the dolphins leaving Earth, I loved it.
Really?
I loved it. I loved it because I didn't expect it. It's a soft mention in the book. It's not like a big production number. It's just like the dolphins left before the humans because they were smarter. I love that they ascended somehow magically out of the ocean into the
just
sky.
Fly, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a great. I love the song. It was like a great musical number. So that I really enjoyed that, and it set me up to think, oh, this is going to be fun. It's going to be a totally different take on the story, and then it ended up not being. It ended up being Stephen Fry cramming in as much of Douglas Adams' narration as possible because he co-wrote the screenplay. Douglas Adams co-wrote the screenplay, and they didn't use the language of film. They used narration, and it didn't work. Anyway.
Wow.
Well, that brings us to the end.
That brings us to the end of Act. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. In a true disappointing, we've talked over each other, and that's the end of Act 1. But we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with Act 2. Yeah, I'm just going to take my seat here, enjoy my fresh cup of joe prepared by Mr. Dan Zarzana. Fresh ground beans. Are these 100% Arabica?
Bean dust.
Arabica?
Soaked in water. Is that what you called it? Or was that a comedian that you were telling me says that?
Let's just assume it was me. I'd like credit for that, please.
So, tell us what has been read by you, Jeff Garvin.
My reading has been very minimal. I think when I'm doing hardcore edits on a book, the thought of relaxing by reading more words is not appealing. And
really?
Yeah, I think editing, when I'm drafting, I want to eat good words, but when I'm editing, it's like, you know how when you're in film school, you'd watch a movie and you just analyze everything?
Right.
I think there's a little bit of that. On the watching front, there's a documentary available on Netflix called The 90s, and it's so good. The only thing that's hard about it is realizing that the 90s were so long ago that there's a documentary about that. Anyway, the thing that's been occupying most of my entertainment time is I started playing a video game that you recommended called Pillars of Eternity.
Yes.
Oh my God, do I love this game.
Oh, great.
My immersion in video games has been limited. The last console system I owned was a PlayStation 2 that I received for my 30th birthday, like my 28th birthday. And it's collected dust over the last 5 or 6 years. You've been kind enough to recommend Steam, and I've bought some older games like Portal and Portal 2. I love those games.
Yeah.
I had Torchlight, which is like a hack and slash dungeon crawl, but I haven't played a legit video role-playing game since Baldur's Gate in the early 2000s. You know, it was like
I think that was in the 90s.
6 CD ROMs in a package.
Now I feel like I have to Google that while you talk.
Oh, man. Well, Pillars of Earth was
Eternity.
Pillars of Earth that's the Ken Follett novel.
That's the Ken Follett novel, right?
Pillars of Eternity was a Kickstarter game. It was funded by like 77,000 people.
By a big developer, Obsidian Entertainment.
I'm just starting to realize what an incredible story platform video gaming is, and I feel embarrassed for not having really dived into it before. But there's a giant world. I mean, there is a Robert Jordan level of complexity world. There are dozens of fully fleshed out, voice-acted, non-player characters. The combat system is original and interesting. The character classes are relevant and awesome. The voice acting is extraordinary. Your character has a semi-psychic capability, and you can go up to any character and read their soul, and all of a sudden there's this beautifully written text backstory. I mean, the writing is extraordinary, and the art, it's a top-down, turn-based strategy kind of experience. What's that called? You told me what that was called. There's like a term for it.
top-down, party-based, turn-based experience, I think, is what I said.
Anyway, but then you'll interact with some things, and there'll be a cutscene like you have in video games. But other times, this little scroll comes up, and the text appears like ink words, and there's like an impressionistic drawing that appears with a little bit of animation. So it's beautiful, the variety of art. So it's been a really wonderful story experience and a great role-playing experience, and the music and the art are fantastic, and that has been totally fulfilling.
Yeah, and many of the voice actors are cast of Critical Role.
Oh my God, I have 2 Matt Mercers in my party right now.
Yeah, Doppelmercer.
And there was a Sam Riegel for a moment.
Yep, great. If you only read one book in 2019, what would you put at the top of your TBR pile?
I have committed to reading 2 Shakespeare classics this year, and I think I would put Hamlet at the top of my TBR list.
You've read Hamlet?
Yeah, but it's been since high school. I have a lot of books on my TBR. I got the new Michael Connelly. Yeah. I have that murder mystery by Alex Horowitz that I didn't finish last year.
But is there one book that you've always wanted to read, you've never read it, and for whatever reason, you just haven't been able to get to it, but you really want to?
I've never read, on my Shakespeare kick again, I have never read Macbeth. I'm an actor, been in theater since I was a kid. I've never read Macbeth. I'm reading Macbeth this year.
Oh.
That's my never read.
Committed.
Yeah.
All right.
How about you? What have you been reading, watching, playing?
I'm about 5 pages from the end of The River Why by David James Duncan. I had hoped to finish it before this, but I just ran out of time.
What sort of a book is it?
It's a literary coming-of-age story. I'm really, really enjoying it. Ooh. It is the humor and the insight remind me of Catch-22 and A Confederacy of Dunces. Both of which I love. I love those books. And The River Why makes me feel the same way that those 2 books made me feel.
Oh, wow.
My wife gave me a book in protest of your characterization of Jonesy from our Alien episode. It's called Jonesy, 9 Lives on the Nostromo. It's a little graphic novel.
No way!
It's a little graphic novel that follows the cat and what the cat was doing during.
Oh my God! It's like
during the events
and Guildenstern are
Alien.
dead for Jonesy.
That is exactly right. It's great.
I'm sorry, Michelle. Was she was pissed off at me for calling Jonesy a sociopath.
I don't know that I would. Yes, you know what? I will say she was very offended by you calling the cat a sociopath.
Hold on, listen, Michelle. The cat watches multiple humans die with disinterest. That is the definition of sociopathy. I'm sorry. Maybe I should read this graphic novel.
If I were to pick one book that I really want to read before this year is over, it's The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. It's the first, I don't know how long the series is going to be. These are like Rothfuss-sized books. Many hundreds or maybe even 1,000+ pages per volume. There's 3 books out right now. I want to get started on that. The one thing that I did do in the last 2 months since we recorded last was the last time I had just finished Fallout 4.
Yes.
This time, I am so happy to say that I have finally finished Mass Effect Andromeda, which is the 4th in the Mass Effect series. This is kind of a reboot. It takes place in the Andromeda Galaxy, not in our solar system, which is the first Mass Effect trilogy takes place all within the Sol system. Like Fallout 4, I was really excited for it. I bought it on release day and I didn't really get into it. But like Fallout 4, after, 6 months or so, I started playing it again. And then something just kicked in and it just clicked with me. So I finished that and I really enjoyed it.
All right, well, should we finish our coffee and dive into Act 2?
Moving on.
Act 2 begins with tests, allies, and enemies, aka the Road of Trials. Now in the special world, our hero makes allies, meets enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove his worthiness. I like doing listing the allies, listing the enemies, listing the tests. And since I get to do it my way during this period, that's what I'm going to do. Among the allies would be Ford Prefect, Marvin, the depressed robot, who...
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Oh, I'll campaign hard for Marvin later in the story.
Later, yeah.
Yeah.
It took me a minute, but then yes, okay, I'm agreeing with you. I'm not saying he's not an ally.
Maybe an unexpected ally.
It just takes him.
And Marvin is such a great character.
Please continue.
He's the robot on the Heart of Gold, and he's depressed.
Yeah.
And sees everything through a blue filter, and it's awesome. And then shapeshifter, certainly Zaphod Beeblebrox. He has some ally moments, and then he has some not ally moments. But he's the president of the galaxy and the pirate captain of the Heart of Gold.
Pirate captain.
Yeah, he stole the ship. He's a pirate.
Yeah, that's true.
Trillian, a.k.a. Trisha McMillan, his first mate. Enemies, I kind of struggled with this, but I would say Protestnik Vogon Jeltz. Prostetnik.
Yeah.
Vogon Jeltz.
Absolutely.
And the mice.
Benji and Frankie Mouse. That's sort of the primary. Right.
Tests. This is the part where I started to sort of see the story that I had missed when I read it and watched it. So I actually enjoyed the analysis because it made me appreciate the hero's journey of it more. Because when I was reading it, I'm like, there's no hero's journey here. It's just stumbling into situation after situation. But here are the tests as I see them.
This is where I'm interested now. And I'm really glad that this segment landed on you because... I found one test really that is an actual test, and then yes,
that's so funny.
Please go.
I don't know if it's apparent to the listeners, but we trade off. So if I do Ordinary World one episode, Dan gets it the next episode, and we trade off segments. And I absolutely do that. Like, I hope Dan has to do the Road of Trials. So the first test I see is Arthur survives the Vogon poetry reading by actually listening to it and pretending to appreciate it, but he actually listens to it and survives. The next test is Ford tries to talk the guard out of ejecting them into space through that airlock.
Yep.
But obviously he fails. And then, through no effort of their own, and in the first of a series of Deus Ex Machina moments that plague this book, Arthur and Ford are miraculously beamed aboard the Heart of Gold, a spaceship powered by the infinite improbability drive, which is a wonderful concept.
It
fantastic.
Allows this Deus Ex Machina.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah, it allows that to happen.
It's a brilliant justification for a terribly bad story convention. Like, anytime you have characters just sucked along in a stream of activity that has nothing to do with their free will, it's hard to relate. It's hard to care about those characters, but it's such a brilliant farcical take on it that it is funny enough to keep you reading. So next test, Arthur and Ford are brought before Zaphod on the Heart of Gold, and Arthur recognizes Zaphod as Phil from the party in Islington.
Phil!
Islington. And Trillian as Trisha McMillan. I, in retrospect, saw this as a test that he passes. I think most humans would have lost their minds when confronted with a two-headed talking alien. But
he's already been confronted with Vogons, which are described as the ugliest species in the universe.
Right. But Arthur recognizes them, and now everybody kind of knows Arthur's not an ordinary human. He sees through the shapeshifter in that moment. And then the final test that I had written down is that Arthur, Zaphod, and Trillian arrive at Magrathea, a planet that is itself a planet factory.
Right.
Located in the heart of the Horsehead Nebula, and it's a planet that's been dormant for millions of years. And when they get close, this alert system goes off and launches nukes at their ship. And moments before their certain doom, Arthur is the one who has the idea to switch on the improbability drive, and he saves them all. That is the first moment in this book where Arthur does something active and makes a difference in the plot of the book. So to me, that was the last in these series of tests.
Interesting.
That's
okay.
Probably your ordeal or something.
No. Following the Road of Trials is the approach to the inmost cave where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous...
Wait. I think we have to do deal or ordeal, right, before approach, or we're gonna spoil it. Dan's going to make a Staples run, get us some index cards. Get the lined ones, multicolored, if you would, please, Dan. He's going to get us some index cards. And then he is going to incorrectly identify my choice. I'm going to incorrectly identify his choice, and then we will compare and shame each other. We'll be right back. All right. We've exchanged cards, and now we can safely move on to approach.
Approach to the inmost cave, where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of his quest is hidden. I kind of struggled with this because there is no quest, really, like we've talked about. Arthur's just being dragged along. But what you just said was the last test is what I thought the approach to the inmost cave is. At the beginning, Arthur activates the infinite improbability drive just as the missiles are about to hit the ship and turns the two missiles into a bowl of petunias and a whale that then fall to the planet. I love the thought process of the whale as it's falling.
Cut to whale's point of view.
But yeah, I thought that was a really fun, humorous, ridiculous part of this book. And I think it's one of the things that when people think about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I think that scene is one that comes to people's mind pretty often.
Well, you know how when we were talking about A Christmas Story and how if we focused only on Ralphie's quest for the BB gun, we'd miss out on all these amazing scenes in the movie. I kind of feel that way about Hitchhiker's Guide, is that the best parts have nothing to do with the quote story.
Yeah. So the whale impacts the surface of the planet and in an infinitely improbable moment reveals a hidden passage into the underground portion of the planet. The heroes now must go underground into a cave. It was a little on the nose.
My approach is probably the tail on the thing you just described. Arthur and company, like you say, they descend to the surface of Magrathea, and it's windy and desolate and totally like LV-426 from Alien. Like, I pictured that scene. And before they step out of the ship, they're discussing whether or not to bring Marvin the depressed robot along. And here we get the name... Here we get the name of one of my favorite Radiohead songs, Paranoid Android.
Yep.
And that was a ping for me because so much of this book has been embedded in pop culture vernacular. And I knew about most of it, but this was a surprise, the Paranoid Android. So again, Arthur sets himself apart here by being the only one of the crew to express wonder at having landed on a new world.
Yeah.
Even in this cynical book where everything that happens is horrible and random, he's the one who's like, wow, I'm standing on a whole new planet.
And there's two sunsets. He's watching the sunset and he's just overcome with how beautiful it is.
There are very few moments in this book that make it a science fiction novel. It's a farce featuring the lens of sci-fi. But that moment, I really thought that standing on a new world, looking at a landscape that's totally alien was one of those.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, they find a passageway leading to the interior of the planet, enter, and are subsequently trapped and knocked out. That brings us to
the ordeal.
Let's exchange cards here. You wrote, Benji and Frankie Mouse try to take Arthur's brain to learn the ultimate question.
And that is what you said to do. I mean, that is what you said too.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's find out if we both chose wrong. Ordeal. This is the dark heart of the story where the hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. When Arthur and company awaken, they're greeted by a Magrathian named Slarty Bartfast, who takes them deep into the heart of the planet. And here is where some of my irritation with this book really coalesces. The first thing is that all the names are ridiculous on purpose, and I get it, but it's almost fatiguing at this point. It's just every alien has a ridiculous name with no sense of continuity or, it's just totally ridiculous. And the other thing that drives me nuts about this book, and maybe it's magnified by the fact that I did the audiobook, but like half of the dialogue is someone saying something and then the other character repeating it incredulously and then the first character repeating it again. So it's like...
repeating it incredulously?
Yeah, exactly. Arthur says, Slarty Bartfast, and then, Slarty Bartfast says, Slarty Bartfast. And there's so much of that. It's too much. It's too much. Let us be incredulous about the names. They're already incredulous. So I estimate roughly 25% of the dialogue in this book is one character or another repeating something incredulously and then having it repeated back to them. Okay, so when they reach the center of Magrathea, Slarty Bartfast brings Dent and company before the great aliens at the center of the planet, and they turn out to be Benji and Frankie Mouse. The literal mice that Trillian brought with her when she left Earth.
That's impossible.
Right?
No, you were supposed to say, no, Dan, just
Impossible.
very, very improbable.
Right. Sorry.
Boo, Jeff. Boo.
Man.
You had your chance.
I had my chance.
Go ahead. You had your chance.
Turns out, Jesus. Turns out Earth itself has been a massive experiment run by mice in order to obtain the question behind the answer to life, the universe, and everything, which of course is 42, which is why we chose this book, because we're both 42 this year, and because our singular patron at the time, Scott Sanford, shout out, voted for it. So here we also learn the name of the computer that calculated the answer, Deep Thought, which was the name given to the famous chess-playing computer developed at Carnegie Mellon University and later at IBM. More awesome pop culture embedding.
Right.
Anyway, turns out Vogons blew up Earth mere moments before the experiment would have yielded the great question.
Yeah.
And the mice, therefore, were in the process of commissioning a new planet to duplicate this 7.5 million year experiment. But now they don't have to because Arthur's here. And he's the lone survivor and the witness of the great experiment. So they decide they're going to cut open Arthur's brain and extract the question. And this, in a weird way, this ordeal has everything. It's got woman as temptress. The hero loses his innocence as Arthur realizes life as he knows it is a total joke. We've got atonement with the father, where he confronts whoever holds the ultimate power in his life, which here technically is the mice, but which I think we are meant to understand is the senseless randomness of life itself. Randomness is what has led this whole journey. And then we've got apotheosis, the hero's recognition of the divine in himself when Arthur realizes his brain already contains the answer to the question to life, the universe, and everything. And he's as qualified as anyone in the universe to survive this mess and come out the other side.
The one thing that I struggled with a little bit, and I think I've come to an answer, but like Trisha McMillan, Trillian, is also human, and she's there too. So why is Arthur the one whose brain has to be cut out in order to obtain the ultimate question? But I think it's because Trillian left Earth with Zaphod Beeblebrox months ago, and Arthur was on Earth the longest.
So
he was the last human to be on Earth as a part of the experiment. Maybe that's it.
I'm going to go ahead and say it was just sexism. British 1970s sexism. This was before Margaret Thatcher, so I'm just going to go with that. Trillian in the movie is such a worthless, empty character.
Right.
And you can see Zooey Deschanel knowing it and being like, well, I guess they're at least paying me. She's just like, I'm supposed to say what now? It's such a horrible characterization. Just nothing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I had hopes for it, and I remember seeing it in the theater and not caring for it when I saw it.
One of those examples where you go, we'll just get a great cast. We'll get Alan Rickman. We'll get John Malkovich. We'll get Sam Rockwell. And
it could have been, should have been great. That brings us to the ultimate boon or reward, seizing the sword, where, having faced his worst fear, the hero seizes the object of his quest. I didn't really see much of a reward except the knowledge that Arthur is special in some way. Like, he is, supposedly in his brain, is the ultimate question. That is the source of, or the result of the experiment that Earth was.
Yeah.
This 10 million year experiment.
Yeah.
But I didn't see a whole lot of reward for Arthur here. He doesn't do anything with it. There's 10 pages of book after this.
Right.
And there's nothing.
I mean, I guess my thought was, well, you can only sustain a weak premise on which to plant really funny stuff for so long. I think the reward, and it's funny because I kept thinking about Monty Python as I was reading this book. It's the same sensibility. But if you look at the Holy Grail, there's a quest, a legitimate quest structure that supports it. Anyway, I think the reward here is, like you said, it's his life, his brain, his autonomy. From page 1, everyone is out to destroy Arthur Dent's life. From the village council, who's wants to bulldoze his house to put in an expressway, to the Vogons destroying Earth, to the mice who want to cut his brain, and Arthur using, some combination of humanity and cunning survives.
I guess it's time for our beverage break.
I guess so. Brings us to the end of Act 2.
We come limping into the beverage break.
All right, so this is a switcheroo. You were so busy this last month and a half that I had to take over the mantle of picking out the themed beverage.
Yeah.
So in true Garvin fashion, I did it last minute. And, I don't know. You describe what we're about to experience.
Well, I noticed that the conveyance is different. I typically put the beverage in like a wine bottle gift bag.
Yeah.
And you make a big show of pulling out the tissue paper, and it's noisy and
It's a nice auditory experience for the listener,
I guess,
to experience that.
So what's sitting in front of me here is a wadded up sweatshirt, which I'm assuming has a bottle of something in it.
That's my Maxine sweatshirt, I'll have you know, from 2007.
So since we're missing the auditory experience, I'll just go fluff 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 as we uncover what do we have. Fuller's ESB Extra Special Bitter.
Yeah.
And that is appropriate because that is what Arthur and Ford drink
6
right
pints of
before
bitter.
the destruction of the earth.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, when I realized 6 days ago that you weren't, I just texted you and said, hey, so I'll do the beverage because I knew you were just like, hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah.
So I did some research and I found a brewery in Michigan.
Yep.
That makes a
Short,
right. That makes Pan Galactic Gargle Blaster.
Yeah.
Couldn't get a hold of it in time. There are no specialty bottle shops where I'm from. I just don't. Like if Bevmo doesn't have it, oops, sorry. But then I thought, rarely is there a drink mentioned in the story. And when there is, you try to find that thing or something like it. So I started researching bitters, and I got a list off of Beer Advocate of all these different bitters. And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize Young's was a British brewery. I didn't realize Fuller's and Old Speckled Hen. So this morning, I went to Bevmo in Burbank right before I came here. And I'm in the British section, looking at all this stuff and cross-referencing my phone. And at the Bevmo if you ask somebody what you're looking for, they'll be like, the beer's over there in that corner. And so when the guy came up to me and said, hey, can I help you find something? I was very skeptical. And I said, yeah, I'm looking for a British bitter. And he immediately lit up and was like, oh, well, these are the two you want to check out, Old Speckled Hen and Fuller's ESB. But Fuller's is closer to what would be termed a British bitter. So I'm like, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
all
it
right.
was really helpful.
Good job, hometown Bevmo staff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I usually have a good experience when I go in there. When somebody asks me if they can help, they're usually very knowledgeable.
So if there's anyone in the Bevmo corporate culture listening to this saying a little sponsorship.
All right, let me open this bottle of Fuller's ESB.
Wow, that came off, didn't it?
That is a very nice amber color.
Oh, yeah. It's darker than I expected. Very little head. Authentic kind of thin
I
ale.
almost feel like the center of it is brown. I don't know.
Like iced tea colored.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Iced tea that's been sunning for a long time.
Yeah.
Way past the time you should normally
Yes,
bring
it's
it in.
Oversteeped iced tea. That's very malty. Very malty smelling.
I don't know if we are desensitized by drinking American IPAs, but this is not bitter at all.
Well, it's got an IBU rating of 40.
So it's not bitter at
It's
all.
not. No. But I mean, compared to a lager, I guess it would be bitter. It's very
Sure.
malty. I know I sound like pretentious when I say things like this, but when I was in Britain, the pubs I went to,
Yeah.
I remember how different the beer drinking experience was. It wasn't ice cold. It didn't come from with a pressurized tap. You kind of pump it. And this is a pretty authentic getting a pint in the pub experience. So I say yay.
Yeah?
Yeah. Cheers.
I like it. It's good. Easy drinking, too. It's low alcohol. 5.9% is what the bottle says.
Brewed beside the Thames since 1845.
All right, so we have to drink 6 of these.
Yep.
To survive the matter transference beam. So we are going to get on that and continue with Act 3.
All right, welcome back from the break. I've had 3 pints of Fuller's ESB, and Act 3 begins with the road back. The hero is pursued by vengeful forces, which he disturbed when he seized the sword. We got magic flight here. Arthur, Ford, Zaphod, and Trillian escape the mice and their henchmen, only to face another battle. The cops have shown up.
The Popo
have shown up to arrest Zaphod and his crew for stealing the Heart of Gold. And Marvin, the depressed robot, rescues them by talking to the cop's spaceship until it commits suicide.
which then severs the life support connection that the two cops are have built into their suits, which kills them.
Right.
Slarty Bartfast left his air car for them, and they used that to escape the interior of Magrathea. That's the aided flight. That's the magic flight part, I think, where the hero receives assistance in his escape.
That's good. My take on it was that Marvin was somehow repaying Arthur's kindness at the beginning, maybe, or the fact that Arthur sort of listened to him.
I don't know.
Really weak.
Yeah, I think Marvin was just bored.
Yeah.
Wanted something to talk to, so
there's very little causality of any kind in this book, and so it's hard to draw threads.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add to that. And that, I guess, takes us into Resurrection, where the hero has been purified by death in a literal or a symbolic way and returns to the land of the living a changed person. Arthur didn't have his brain cut out by the mice.
Right.
I had such a hard time with the end of this because after the escape, there's one last chapter that is half a page long. We've got to cram in all the rest of the hero's journey. So I mean, everyone gets onto the ship and they leave Magrathea. But to do what?
I always hesitate in these moments to talk about my own writing experience because I feel like it's pompous or self-involved. But I just happen to be in this editing process where I'm working on the end of my book with my editor. And my editor's really insightful and brutal and keeps trying to draw out from me, like, what's the best possible ending? What's the most satisfying? What's the most authentic? Are you just quitting here? Do you need to, is there more? And I read that last half a page and I'm like, my editor would have kicked Douglas Adams' ass all over Britain for this ending. It was so disappointing.
Well, I think what we have to remember is that there's 4 more books.
Yeah, but like still you have to give me some satisfaction for having lived through your story and the promise of what the next book is. So I wonder if it's just like, oh, I guess I'll stop it here and the next book will begin. I don't know. Yeah. I guess my take was that Arthur survived the end of the earth and not having his brain chomped out. So he's resurrected.
Right.
On some level. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could say humanity lives on, but
yeah, because I guess he and Trillian could have human babies and repopulate.
For one generation, and then you run into. That's it. I got nothing.
I wonder if people who love this book are going to absolutely slaughter us on Twitter. Because
I don't know.
If you're listening,
you have to recognize though that this particular story doesn't fit real well within the hero's journey. Or the hero's journey doesn't fit real well within this story.
This is not a traditional narrative with a real plot. This is a series of random events, and the commentary.
They're not random, Jeff. They're just very improbable.
So so that brings us to Return with the Elixir. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. I think the elixir here is the knowledge that life is random and meaningless, and that's okay. And I think that's the crux of the book is everything's ridiculous, don't panic.
I can sass that.
I will say, had it not been so hyped up, I think I really would have appreciated more the joyful hilarity of Douglas Adams's focus on the minutia of life. That's really the beauty of this book, and the things that you remember are the hilarious sidebars.
One thing that I think about a lot is the ravenous bug bladder beast of Trawl.
Yes.
A
that takes
creature that is so stupid that it thinks if you can't see it, it can't see you. I love that.
Yes. So great. So great.
It's just bits like that are the shining moments of this story, but they're not connected to the hero's story itself.
Absolutely right. Well, that brings us to the end.
So, what are we covering next month?
So the votes are in.
Yes.
Gangs of New York, the Martin Scorsese classic.
Have you ever seen Gangs of New York?
All I know is
Daniel
Day-Lewis, giant mustache. Can't wait.
Is it more giant than his mustache in There Will Be Blood? Well, I guess we'll find out. If you'd like to earn the right to vote on our next episode, check out patreon.com/heroesjourney.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Tell your friends and give us a 5-star review on iTunes.
How many 5-star reviews do we have?
While you read the next part, I'll look it up.
All of them.
That's right.
I don't know. Actually, I haven't looked in a little bit, so there might be a 1-star in there. There will be after this episode. If this show inspires you, informs you, or even just makes you laugh, go to patreon.com/heroesjourney and learn how you can support the show and get some cool free stuff.
The Hero's Journey is produced by myself, Jeff Garvin, and Dan Zarzana.
That's myself.
With original music
by Taylor.
Thanks to Dean Ethington for designing our logo and being our demigod patron. What a mensch. And thank you to Fuller's for this delightful extra special bitter.
I like it. Okay, so we kind of talked over Taylor Jordan, original music by Taylor Jordan. I just wanted to get that in there.
He's such a talented musician. Check him out at dramatics.net.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is copyright by a bunch of companies in a bunch of years.
Yeah, it's too many to track. Please follow us on Twitter at Heroes Podcast. Like us on Facebook.com/Heroes Journey Podcast. And check out our hilarious and informative show notes, including a link to play the text adventure at heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Until next time,
journey on.